TV suppressed. Well, good afternoon and happy Ash Wednesday, if that's not an odd thing to say to everyone listening today.
Yeah.
Happy Ash Wednesday.
Happy Ash Wednesday.
There's not enough
you
Ash Wednesday
miserable
cards
sinner.
out there. Yeah, right.
Listen up, all you sinners.
In fact, you shouldn't even be listening today. You're so horrible.
Yeah, are you giving up 21/6 the net for
No,
for Lent?
don't do that. Don't do that.
Never.
Give up everything but 21.
But
Yeah,
21/6
there
the
you go.
net.
There you go.
But we thank you for tuning in. This is Questions You Never Thought You Could Ask in Church. It's a broadcast and podcast where we invite you to text in whatever questions you might have. Questions on God, questions on Christianity, questions on the Bible, questions on just trying to make sense of your spiritual life, questions about maybe even church. And you can text those into 815-314-0363. Let me give you that one more time, 815-314-0363. If you are joining us on Facebook at 216 The Net or Fellowship of Faith, you can post your questions right there as well. Either way, they'll get to us. Here today with Steve. Steve's in a bad mood. It's Ash Wednesday. He thinks he's a miserable
Horrible.
sinner, and and he's right.
Grumpy about it. Was born this
We
way.
got Grumpy Cat over here on the right.
I was born sinful and grumpy.
I believe you.
Yeah.
That's why babies cry so much.
Well, it balances because, my wife, you guys know Barbie. She's like unicorns, rainbows, happy all the time.
Yeah,
so
happiest person
I've got to
ever.
bring us to a level
You
playing
do.
field.
You do.
Because
I mean,
otherwise our home would be pink. Clouds.
Little pink houses.
I actually grew up in a pink house.
Yeah.
My dad,
Really?
yeah.
Inside, outside?
Outside.
Outside,
Yeah.
like Pepto-Bismol pink.
Mm.
Yeah.
Exciting.
All of it, even the brick,
He painted the brick pink.
everything.
That's
is
a
pink.
bold move.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
I did serious. We had the
Okay, we need pictures. of
little
that.
pink house.
We need pictures.
I'll see if my parent. I don't know if my dad's listening, but he may or may not. He gets frustrated. He's a lot like me. He's kind of grumpy sometimes, but
Didn't cry. born of
kind-hearted.
skull.
Like
Yeah.
don't let that grumpiness fool you. I'm really a caring person.
This you're laughing over here.
Only because I know what's going on in your mind.
You're really a kind person. You weren't yesterday, but that's fine.
I am grumpy Gus will be your new what? Brooke, she's online right now. And in the comments, she says, Grumpy Gus will be your new name. All right, Brooke. Well, I have some names for you as well. So
G squared. Double G.
GG.
GG.
Gigi. All right, Gigi. Pink house, Andrew? You too?
No.
No?
No.
No, you avoided that
Mine
one?
is brick, and I have not painted it.
Okay.
Tina says, that sounds like a John Mellencamp song. It is. Little Pink House.
Maybe that was John Cougar.
John Cougar. Oh,
I don't
in his cougaring days.
Cougar.
Did you just add that pink brick in the background?
No, that was there.
That was already there.
That was already there.
Wow.
It's
Ken's precognitive,
yeah.
He's just, he's on it.
I asked
Glinda left him a note that, hey, you're going to talk about this.
yeah, I asked Lana.
Oh.
I said, hey, go with the pink brick first.
She knew. She knew last week.
That's right.
Well, today is Ash Wednesday, and we have a lot of questions here in front of us dealing with this time of year that Christians often practice. A lot of times don't know why they practice, but it's kind of made its way into the cultural scheme. If any of you celebrated Fat Tuesday last night, that gets its inspiration directly from Ash Wednesday. You guys do anything for Mardi Gras?
Wait, Mardi Gras is in a couple weeks, isn't it? No, that's St.
No,
Patrick's Day.
yeah, St. Patrick's Day is in a couple
That's
weeks,
separate from Mardi
which
Gras.
might as well be the same,
Yeah.
right?
It's all.
No, Mardi Gras
shamrocks and
ends
leprechauns
on
and stuff.
Fat Tuesday, which was yesterday.
No,
so
I-
up until 11:59
I
Central
watched
Time.
an
right?
entertaining show last night that was ironically on like every news channel. And it was it must be such a good show. It was very comedic. And so I thought, well, this is interesting. It's on a lot of news stations for some reason.
Lasted about an hour.
Yeah, about an
Yeah,
hour.
hour and 1 minute. from
Yeah.
What I'm told.
Anyway, so that's what I did.
Did you wear beads?
I didn't. I threw a lot of beads at the
You threw
TV.
your beads?
It'll be fun to see Saturday Night Live.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I felt like I was watching half the
Truth,
time.
Truth.
But then Nebraska basketball played at 6. That led right up to it.
Yeah.
And Nebraska beat Ohio State, which is they're
Always
ranked 23rd by 8 points last night. So it was
Always
a good, great game. So,
Wait, who's ranked 23rd?
Ohio State.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What is Nebraska ranked?
They're not.
Oh, okay.
It's a building year. But they're coming on in Big Ten
For the
tournaments
last
coming
Right
up.
time.
decade.
It's at the
So
right
we're
time.
gonna we're gonna see
All
what's
right.
happening. So,
All right.
Anyway,
Well, that's your sports update.
Yep.
Sports in Nebraska update. We
need
didn't know
the-
this was a news show.
We need
actually.
the like
Can we get a traffic and weather update, Kent?
Yeah. On the 10s.
Up here, Sky Chopper for 20.
We've got the net copper right?
we need the
Looking
guy
out the
from,
window and it looks nice.
we need the guy from Police Academy. Remember when he used
Oh,
to do
yeah.
all the noises
yeah,
and stuff?
yeah.
He did a great helicopter. Anyway, let's move on.
Let's see if we can get him on the show.
Yeah, let's do. I don't even know if he's alive.
He is. He was on
Yes.
America's Got Talent last year.
Is it really?
Yeah, he's trying to come back.
For his
All right,
helicopter
you know,
noises.
Yeah, making noises.
All right.
Still doing the helicopter and beatboxing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well, we've got
I love
Yeah,
having
like
this guy in studio,
know,
by the
we-
way, because I
live-
can't see him, but all I hear is giggling. It's the best. It's like our own little laugh track.
It is.
let's get him a mic. Let's get him a mic.
We
Get him on
do.
here.
We need a mic.
So we've got a bunch of Ash Wednesday, Lent, Monday, Thursday,
All
and a
things.
question about sex. So
I mean, it seems fit.
we're
right?
gonna hit
So-
everything this week. Let's start off with, as we said, Happy Ash Wednesday. What is Ash Wednesday?
Yeah,
Seems
maybe
like
we
a
just
good
start
place
there,
to
right?
start. Yeah,
So it's a Wednesday. So it
it's a
gets
Wednesday.
its name from the day
and
it's
there's
on,
some ashes
and there's some
involved.
ashes involved. So
Dave
first-
gets to practice his drawing of crosses.
and I get to practice my
Yes.
drawing of crosses tonight.
The-
Yeah. So look, Ash Wednesday is a Christian holiday that marks a season. So it's the beginning of a season called Lent, and I can unpack this a lot more. But Lent is I got to back it up.
We only
All right.
have an hour and 2
I know.
minutes.
I only got an hour and 2
so-
minutes because we're gonna go longer. We're gonna go longer. Steve's gonna throw beads at me. I mean, it's gonna all be good. You got to randomly stand up and like boo or clap
That's
at
great.
various times in this too.
That's what the man behind the TV is
yeah,
for.
exactly, exactly, right.
I thought it was Max Headroom. Remember Max
Oh,
Headroom?
yeah.
Yes. Okay. Anyway, sorry.
So, here's the gig on this. So, for centuries, Christians have followed a calendar of their own making, and sometimes that's odd to people. But if you think about it, we all follow like 10 different calendars, right? I mean, we have our like January 1 to December 31 calendar, but we also have like fiscal calendars where we work. And if you have kids in school, or reality, most of life follows a school year calendar, which kind of has an August or maybe Labor Day launch to roughly Memorial Day. And there's all other kinds of calendars that we follow. And we've really kind of ingrained this. Well, Christians, for the longest time, have followed their own calendar as well, because the idea was we want to be so rooted in Jesus that we want to kind of gear our time to his life cycle, if I can put it that way. And by life cycle, I'm not saying that Jesus is like reincarnated every year and you live with it, but like look at kind of the course of his life, things that he's done, and let's get our lives so in sync with him that we almost go through like the full gamut of his experiences in our participation or connection, if you will, to him. So if you read the Gospels, Jesus underwent periods of testing and trial and temptation and suffering and reflection. And that's part of the Christian experience too, is to kind of embrace that. And so just like Jesus went out into the wilderness for 40 days, a time of denial, a time to be tempted by Satan, Christians have kind of picked up on that. And they said, it's probably important in our spiritual journey as well to also have periods where we reflect on our own mortality, where we fast, where we admit and embrace the struggles that we have in a kind of straight on sort of way, where we deny ourselves and come face to face with the idea that temptation, struggle, and all these things are really a reality of life in general. So it's a season to kind of embrace it rather than ignore it, deny it, drug it away, therapeutize it out of our existence, but to face it head on, just like Jesus did. So Lent is 40 days, and it's 40 days before Easter. Ash Wednesday kicks it off, and it's a day all about, like, in the Old Testament, you would repent with sackcloth and ashes. The idea is you would debase yourself, you would lower yourself, you would humble yourself, and these were signs and symbols. And it's just picking up on that biblical imagery to kick this not so jolly season off.
So if you have your sackcloth robe at home, feel free to wear that to church tonight.
You got a hair shirt, Steve?
A hair shirt.
Yeah, you got a hair shirt.
No,
No.
but I've cut. You know this. I cut hair.
Yeah, you cut my hair.
I do.
I always leave with a hair
do.
shirt.
I do. I cut many people's hair, my wife's included.
Yeah.
So I should make one out of your.
And
guys'
all
hair.
joking aside, you do a great job.
Thank you.
I mean, it's like every time I think I know you, it's like you have some other like skill set and talent that you pull out. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm gonna see you do like a field operation at some point.
Right,
I think.
Brooke. She's listening right now. She didn't like your haircut last time.
No,
I
she
did it.
didn't,
No, she
huh?
said it was too short.
Okay.
Too
I
tight.
said too tight, but I thought it was great.
Look good.
Looked great. So we're gonna go against Brooke.
I was talking to Tina today, and it's really at that fine balance because I know, you said that Andrew and I are in denial here.
Right.
I'm not denying it. I'm just not dealing with it right.
Right, we're working through it.
But I like the tight on the side.
Yeah.
But on the top, unless I go all the way down, I'm kind of in that like.
Yeah,
Do you keep it longer?
right.
Do you
My brother's the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's
why I had
also
to-
in denial.
I had to make mine short because it was getting into very comb over territory.
Yeah.
It's like,
Mm.
ah.
Yeah, you just can't go there.
But I didn't realize it until I started cutting my own and had like a mirror and saw the back of my hair and how much hair there isn't. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, right, right.
So now we're committed to just the.
And then you get a
Yeah,
little
get rid of
depressed.
takedown. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
that
There's a period of mourning for sure.
that triangle mirror.
And
that
that's
you
never
use.
picked up in Lent because the whole like shaving the head thing has also been kind of a classic
Yes.
sign of like contrition, and that one's just kind of fallen out of favor.
So we'll be
You know.
offering sackcloth robes and haircuts.
Yeah, fire
At
up clippers.
churches.
Wow, we should
Fire
do that.
clippers,
Yeah,
yeah.
let's on the
Wash,
stage.
wash feet, cut hair, sackcloth. You're all good.
We have a full service.
You're out in the parking lot changing oil.
Yeah.
That's good.
Hey, whatever it takes, right? So I guess getting into the Ash part of Ash Wednesday, what people have crosses on their forehead of ash. How did that come about? What is the purpose of that? Is it just so the pastor can have some fun? And
Yeah, a little bit. There's no like Jesus going, "Thus saith the Lord," on this kind of thing. Like a lot of things that we do, it's just a symbolic expression. And again, it's trying to pick up on that literal idea. Well, it's picking up on two ideas, actually. One is that literal idea of the Old Testament culture pouring ash on themselves, the sackcloth and ash idea. So it's like, okay, there's something in the Bible about this. What's this about? Let's kind of flirt with it a little bit, one day a year. But the other idea behind it is a little bit deeper. It's the idea of being marked by Christ. And, obviously when you're marked by Christ, this goes beyond like some kind of brand or tattoo, that you carry. It's not meant to be a literal mark, but let's not sell that short. So it is also an idea to kind of claim an identification, to identify yourself with him. And that's why it's typically a cross on your head, as opposed to just like, someone throwing some soot in your face or something like that. And you'll see it commonly done where people will maybe go to a morning service or maybe a noon mass or something like that and walk around with it all day. And just like, you got that double take going on. Like, what's that? Yeah, Ash Wednesday.
Speaking of tattoos, do you have a tattoo?
I don't. Do you?
No.
Andrew? Ken?
Wow.
You inked up?
Several.
Wow.
Yeah. How many?
Hardcore.
1, 2, 3, 4. 4 right now.
All right. We're not going to
Four.
ask you to show them.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
What are they
Let me
of?
describe them to our listeners.
What's your most
Yeah.
meaningful one?
My first one, it's really cool. It's on my shoulder, and I never tell anybody what it is. They've really got to take a look at it and go,
So they have to go boating with you or something in order to
Yeah,
figure it out.
or arm wrestle is always a good arm wrestle.
Arm wrestling
you know.
over the top right
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, and then and then there's I've got my wedding ring tattooed
Yeah.
on there.
Yeah,
It's got
sure.
Alice's name. So
And that's
I'm-
not your most important one.
I've never noticed that.
no, and I'll share with you.
Okay.
I'll show you after the show, and
Okay.
that you'll understand why.
Okay. I've
That's
thought
cool.
about it.
That's cool.
Thought about it.
Yeah.
I really like the one, but then it's like kind of cliche where it's the whole sinner saint in the like if you look at
like
it
the
one
reverse
way-
image word.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe, but if it's meaningful to you, it's
We'll see.
cool looking if it's done right.
I like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, actually, all of mine are very meaningful, right? But the
they
first
should be.
the first one's out. You're right. Yeah,
They should be.
Yeah, I don't have the Tasmanian devil or something.
My the dumbest one is
Joe Rogan's face.
Right.
Yeah, right.
I love my brother. He's
Yeah.
a great guy, but he's got the worst tattoo ever. And it's a green 4-leaf clover on his arm,
yeah,
and
right.
it's really weak looking. and it's a little faded now, so it's
Little
like,
prison tattoo.
yeah, like kind of like the dolphin ones on the ankle. You know,
Yeah.
like really,
Yeah.
dolphins.
What if that's your
They mean
spirit-
a lot to you.
Your spirit
With a
animal.
couple little stars. With a couple little stars around the
I
dome.
like Flipper,
Yeah.
just like the next guy, but I'm not going to get him tattooed on me.
I think the worst I ever saw was in my wife's hometown in Indiana, where she grew up, and we were in a fast food place in line. And there was a woman there that looked like she was 60, but she was probably like 35. I mean,
Oh,
just
geez.
hard life.
Mhm.
And they had the like the short sleeve kind of polo shirt uniform. So, sleeves are up over the elbow.
Mm-hmm.
And in that old school, like World War II navy blue, like tattooing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
It was just a series of names going up her forearm, guys' names. And there was like 9 to 10 of these guys' names going up her arm. And then they all had strike throughs through them until you got to the top name. But then like you were looking at it and sometimes it was the same name that was repeated. I just felt bad for her. It's like, you've had a hard life, And then you started on this journey and like, you're not going to, you're going to see it through.
Right.
You're not going to stop inking up, but
Doesn't seem like someone who's learned from her past.
no, it was just,
it just keeps going.
that's rough.
I see Jim on there 3 times.
Yeah, what the? He must have had an impact.
Right.
Different gyms.
Yeah.
Different gyms.
Yeah.
I don't
It's-
know.
Who knows?
Okay.
Are we up? Are we
Yeah.
up tattoos now? So I know the question everyone has been wondering about. Can I have sex during Lent?
Yeah, I don't know, man. You gotta.
That depends.
I think I know what this is picking up on. Can I have sex during Lent?
Is this a thing? Like a serious?
Let me read a passage to you. This is coming out of 1 Corinthians 7, and I'm just going to kind of guess that this is what this is coming out of. Give me 1 second to pull it up, and then we'll tie it into Lent. Here we go. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 7. It's in the first few opening verses. It says this: the husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. Being kind of written in a context where there was like almost an anti-sex vibe in the church going, is this dirty? Is this evil? Is this wrong? Is this unspiritual? And Paul's like, no, this is created by God. It's good. And in a husband-wife relationship, it should be done. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband in the same way the husband does not yield authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife. You give yourself to each other. Then he says this, and this is the verse to get tattooed, but just the first part.
Okay.
Do not deprive each other.
Ah,
All right. There's your life verse, Steve.
it is.
Do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourself to prayer. Then come together again so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. And I think the idea behind this is going, we always think about fasting as being related to food. And Lent is a time of fasting. People will often give up something for Lent, right? Fasting goes well beyond food. You can fast from a lot of things, and any kind of denial of something is in its own right a fast. And so you even see right here in 1 Corinthians, there's an idea that you could even fast from sex. And the idea behind fasting from it is to devote yourself for prayer. It's an intentional spiritual act to give it up for a denial and focus on Christ instead, but for a time, right? And, if that's something that you and your spouse want to give up for Lent, first, it should be mutually decided upon. You get that right out of the spirit of the passage, and it should be for a time. But if that's something you want to do it. But do you have to? No, you don't have to. But to the question, can I have sex? There's a deeper answer to this is going, well, are you married? Because if you're not married, then the answer is no automatically to that. But if you're married, you can have sex during Lent unless that's something you choose to fast from.
Be a
Or anytime.
40 days.
Well, here's a myth about Lent.
Oh,
Because everyone thinks, right, that it's like the 40 days before Easter.
Mhm.
So it starts on Ash Wednesday and it lasts till Easter, right? But if you count it up, it's not actually 40 days. It's like 47 days.
This doesn't include the Sabbath.
Because Sunday, not Sabbath, Sabbath, Saturday. It doesn't include Sunday because resurrection always trumps the rest of the season. And so, the Sabbath was moved to the first day of the week on Sunday because of Jesus' resurrection, or at least early Christians stopped practicing the Sabbath, I should say, and instead gathered on a different day to celebrate a resurrected, renewed, recreated life in Christ that should dictate and operate everything. So even in Lent, Sunday is technically not part of Lent. It is a break from the fast,
That's your
if
cheat-
you
your
will.
cheat
It's a cheat
day?
day. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
I can get on board with that.
Hey, let's go to our comments section real quick on Facebook. And Michelle says, hi, Michelle, Ted, hi. But we've got a question from Tony. And Tony says, good afternoon, guys. My son just left for basic training. Tell him thank you from us. And for the U.S. Army, how do we as followers of Jesus support our military?
Oh man, Tony, great question.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking. And and off the bat, Steve is Navy here. I considered military. I didn't do it. It might be a regret in my life, but it is just a different path I chose early on. But just like mad props to you, man, and to your son especially.
Yep.
Especially in a climate like we have now with so much tension around the world and deployment and stuff being, higher realities than maybe it was a generation ago. So just a huge amount of just congrats and pride and thanks to you and your son for what he's doing. So as a Christian, how do you go about supporting the military? One of the things that I love that the Bible talks about is honoring the governing authorities, which is not always easy, especially if you don't agree or like or find yourself on the same page with who the governing authorities are. But in Romans 13, it will talk about how the governing authorities are there to try to keep order. They're trying to bring justice. They're there to try to do God's work in a strange kind of way, if I can put it that way, in this world. And the military is, when it's at its best, meant to be a positive arm of that, of showing love to neighbor, of protecting people who are oppressed, of protecting people who are being, overrun, of standing up for people. One of the most loving things you can do is to protect someone else. And, one of the ways that you can support the military is truly to just give that encouragement, give that honor, and give that support to the people who are serving. It is a tough gig. And whatever you can do for the individual soldier, for the people and the families that are actually immersed into this, to pray for them, to support them, to lift them up, to walk alongside of them in a very tough sacrifice they're making. I mean, that's a very Christ honoring thing to do.
Yeah. Yep. Shout out to all military and present and past and whatnot. Thank you for your service.
How many years were you in Navy, Steve?
8 years.
You were that long?
I was in reserves as well. And so, yeah.
Was part of that?
Yep. And I remember
4 and 4, or how did it split up?
It was 2
and 6
and 6,
Yeah.
2 and 6. And a lot of it was because of GI Bill. I wanted to use it to go to school and pay that off, because I didn't want my parents to have to pay for schooling. I didn't think it was their responsibility. If I wanted to go to school, I'll pay for my own schooling.
Mm-hmm.
But on a different note, I will say, like, I know you guys went to Vegas recently,
Yeah.
I think. And Vegas, you got to go there once just to get a kind of a modern view of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? But I will say, like, if you are looking for family fun and God, country, and honoring veterans, go to Branson. Branson is killer.
I've been to Branson.
And they've
Branson, Missouri.
Branson, Missouri.
Yeah, southwest corner.
And they've got some awesome shows. If you need any recommendations, let me know, because I used to take a bus.
You take bus tour senior citizens,
senior
right?
citizens down there every year, and it was probably the most fun I've ever had, because they're very honest people, and they don't pull punches. So, but it's probably still one of my favorite demographics. So anyway, yeah. So Tony, tell your son thank you, and we'll be praying for him.
Yeah, absolutely. So before that, we were talking a little bit about fasting. What's kind of the point of fasting, and should I do it?
Yeah, right.
We talked about, like, Jesus fasting 40 days and 40 nights. Like that's quite the amount of time.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's like, can you even imagine that?
No,
I mean, people have done it. People have emulated it.
I'll do like 24 hours.
Yeah, sure.
40 of those.
No, but let's kind of get into the point of it, because I think it's an often misunderstood practice. A couple things. First, Jesus fasted, like you said, and he just kind of assumed his followers would fast as well. It is curious that there is no like command to fast. But, Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount will just say things like this, like, when you fast, it's just kind of implicitly like, oh, you're probably doing this.
Right.
Even though most of us today probably don't, unless it's for a medical reason, like I got to get a blood test in the morning or something like that, or for, health reasons, for purging, or whatever it might be,
Right.
or detoxing, I guess I should say. But, the classic spiritual purpose behind fasting, and I should say as well at this point that it is not a uniquely Christian practice or Judaic practice. You'll see this in many spiritual and faith traditions, is really kind of twofold. One is it's the self-denial idea that I am not going to be mastered by even the things that I need in this world. You need food, but it can be very easy to become enslaved to not only the things that we like, but the things that we even depend on, right? And so it's always kind of carried that connotation of we're not going to be mastered or enslaved by these things, but our will is going to triumph over them. We are not just victims to our impulses. Secondly, that there's also been an idea of denial as an offering or sacrifice to God, as though I am giving you something that's important to me, that I desire, that I like, as a way of just showing my gratitude to you, of honoring you, of putting you first, and by extension, of admitting my dependence on you. So if you fast from food, it's a way of saying, God, I use this fast as a time to realize that everything I eat ultimately comes from you. Yes, I may go to the store to buy it. Yes, I may grow it in my backyard, but you're the one who makes the crops grow. You're the one who's given us this earth that even produces food, and good food at that, for us to eat. And I just want to give it back to you as a way of saying, you've given this to me, and I acknowledge that before you. So it carries those connotations. There's others that different people will build into it as well, which are cool. And you can actually read some really cool books and stuff about people who've practiced this regularly, and the spiritual benefit that they find in it. Another factor behind it is simply time. Let's talk food specifically. Think of the amount of time you spend actually eating, preparing food, and cleaning up after eating. And that I'm going to give that time to you, God. And then, of course, there's the repentance idea you see deep within the Old Testament, is that when people were broken before God, they would let that go. Me, I stress eat. I'm broken. I'm like shoving it down, right? But the Old Testament pattern was different than that.
Yeah, well, I can't tell you the amount of packages of beef sticks we go through at church. Because this guy doesn't eat hardly, and then what you do eat is a sodium-filled beef stick.
Yeah, beef sticks and nuts, man. Right?
And
by the way, thank you, Melinda, for purchasing them.
Yeah, and one thing I've heard with the idea of like giving up or fasting during Lent is that someone said it to me: give up and take up. So yes, you're giving up something, or if you choose to do that, but you also need to add in that element of taking up praying or spending time with God. Like, okay, giving up, chocolate or whatever. What is that really doing for you? But you need to replace that and then use that as a time to reflect, to pray, to confess, all those types.
Because I think at the pop Christian level, it just kind of falls down to, people give something up for Lent, so I'm supposed to give something up for Lent. And that's all right. That we all got to enter through the door somewhere. But yeah, it should go beyond that.
So we're walking around with ashes on our head today to let everybody know I'm a good Christian. I'm giving up chocolate for Lent to let everybody know I'm a good Christian. What about the other 320 days of the year?
Yeah, right. Actually, I would turn the narrative on that, Kent. I think it's actually intended to be the exact opposite. I don't think walking around with ash on your head is in any way meant to imply that I'm a good Christian. I think it's actually meant to imply I'm a sinful human being. And the point of repentance is an admittance of brokenness. So it's really an exposure and public testimony that I am a messed up, broken person. And if anyone is doing it, it's kind of like, well, as Jesus would say, don't be like the Pharisees who, when they fast, go around with a broken look on their head to show how pious they are. I think Ash Wednesday can be perverted that way. And people almost use it, like you said, Kent, but that's not the point at all.
Yeah.
And what about the other 320 days of the year?
Yeah.
Well, I think we'd all kind of admit that life is bigger than any one emotion. And the Christian walk is meant to go beyond any one posture. If you're walking around broken all the time, that's problematic. But if you're never broken, that's also problematic.
Sure.
Likewise, on the flip side, I'd say if you are walking around trying to be happy and joy all the time, that's actually problematic. That's not being a full-rounded human being. It's being one-dimensional.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, if you're never joyful and happy, that's problematic. And so the entire idea behind the church here was that it was giving, I hate to use the word forcing, but encouraging Christians to intentionally embrace a full gamut of spiritual posture and emotion, because I think we all have tendency to gravitate towards one or another. I mean,
Sure.
I got certain people that are close to me who are happy to be depressed all the time. And I know some other people that are close to me that are so afraid of sadness or introspection. Neither is healthy. And neither, I think, is the fullness of what God has made the human being to be. And so I would say, yeah, it is problematic, maybe, if people are falsely putting on these airs different times a year. But the church year can also force us to face those areas that don't come naturally to us. And, and I used to kind of, being a guy who grew up in liturgical church, I kind of had a pendulum shift in my life where I saw so much of the ritualism and religiosity and missed point of it all that I almost kind of jettisoned most of it for a lot of my life. But sometimes you got to get out of it to kind of then reappreciate it the way it's supposed to be rather than what it became. And so, I hate it when it's pushed out like a rule, because it isn't a rule. It's a tool. And if the tool ain't working for you, get a different tool.
Right.
But sometimes there's a tool hanging right there on the wall that's perfect for the task at hand. And don't be afraid to grab it just because it's been used a lot by other people.
That's right. Of course, you're listening to 216 The Net. This is questions you never thought you could ask in church. Like, follow, and subscribe to Fellowship of Faith out there, Facebook, on YouTube. Go to, and I'll throw it up there as well, go to their webpage, fellowshipoffaith.org, and you can catch the old shows. You can catch old Sunday services right there at FOF Plus, right? Like Discovery Plus, FOF Plus, which is great.
Any other plus.
That's right.
Join the club.
If the tool works.
And of course, this is the show where you can ask anything. I see that we've got a question out there from Melissa. What denomination church is this? But that's a good way to figure everything out too. But we invite everybody of every walk of faith to ask questions.
Yeah, you got it. And thank you so much for asking. Fellowship of Faith is affiliated with the Lutheran denomination. And I always like to say, don't hold that against us. But the people who not only tune into our church, but come to our church, it's really kind of a cool church of minorities when it comes to spiritual background. I've come to find that while there's a lot of people who come from a Lutheran background, it actually is the majority of the church.
Right.
There's people who come from Catholic backgrounds, different Protestant backgrounds, no church backgrounds, different religious backgrounds, and, just exploring the way of Jesus together and giving our lives over to him and letting him do his work.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yep. Someone asked about the different church holidays. So they said, I started attending a non-denominational church a few years back. I noticed that we don't do any of the Christian holidays I grew up with, except for Christmas and Easter. I kind of miss them, but I love my church. I'm not sure what to do about that.
Yeah, I hear you. And, I hear this question a lot, and I really thank you for kind of putting it out there and like just owning it, because, the modern church movement as we know it is really a recent phenomenon. I mean, when you think of a place like Willow Creek starting in 1975 and like, the mega church movement and contemporary church movement really taking off in the 80s and 90s, those were the heyday. And I think they were really a gift of God to the church. I love these churches and what they've brought to the greater church as a whole, because the greater church as a whole, I think, got so immersed in its rituals and traditions that it was almost putting those in a place of primacy over the way of God, the place of Christ, and the movement of the Spirit. And I think these early leaders responded to that in many because of the ice they cut, were able to travel. At Fellowship of Faith being one of those churches. 211, I know, where you came out of, very similar that way. And I think what it did for a long time, and maybe what the church you're attending that doesn't do these holidays now is doing, is it's allowing people who have been burned by that or stymied by all the rites and rituals that have gotten in the way of their walk with Christ instead of being tools. It's allowing them to detox from it. Or as they often used to put it, it's kind of taking some of the weird factor out for people who didn't grow up with it, to let people approach Christ on their own terms, so to speak, without navigating the church culture, so to speak. Incredible, powerful witness happening there. But yeah, like a lot of people, even the mega churches will, in the non-denom world, will say this, that you'll see a lot of them even starting to go back a little bit, because there's a lot of people yearning for, and I'm not going to use the word traditional, but ancient spirituality, ancient spiritual practices that have been a part of the church for, if not centuries, a millennium, but trying to express them in new ways, repackage them, if you will, so that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Every church has got to find its own pattern on that. I would, talk to your pastor about that, and not to condemn him in it by any means, because no church can be all things to all people. Support him in the ministry, especially as it sounds you love that church. That's great, but share with him what you're wrestling with, and I bet he'll be quick to help you on some of that and point some resources. And I would add this as well. Don't depend on your congregation for the totality of your spiritual practice. There are many things you can do personally, including following the church year and some of the practices that go along with it, even if your church isn't doing it on Sunday. I know at Fellowship of Faith, we are a very modern-oriented church. And there are some in our midst that do hunger for some of the spiritual practices that we don't practice regularly. And that's great. Feed that. If it's Advent, you can get a wreath for your home. You can do some Advent prayers with that. You can do things. It's Lent. You can give something up for Lent. You can do maybe things like the daily office. Look into that, or other spiritual practices that go along with it. And Google is going to take you a long way on this. But if I can give you any specific tools, text on in 815-314-0363, or post it on Facebook, or just hop on our website, fellowshipoffaith.org, like Kent mentioned earlier, and email me, and we can help you navigate maybe how to make a personal spiritual practice of that.
Yeah, and I think at Fellowship of Faith, we tend to strike a nice balance between that of not jettisoning everything from the church's past, and actually maintaining a lot of it, putting either a new package, around it or something like that. But it's like, to not make those things a slave, but still see the value in them and pull that value out and use it.
And use it as I think like what you guys have concocted for tonight, we're going to be putting ash on people and doing some ancient prayers and stuff. And yet, the music set as it's set up, and some of the flow, and what you've done with the mood in the room, using the best of new technology. I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very excited for the service. And our service is at 6:00 tonight, and it'll be live streamed or in person. Fellowshipoffaith.org. I'm going to give just one plug to a Christian thinker, professor, writer who's influential on me. I never met him personally, but I've read him. He's died in the past decade, but his name's Robert Weber, spelled with 2 B's, and he taught up in Northern Seminary, I want to say, which is in the Chicago suburbs. It was in Lombard. I think it's in Lisle right now. But he wrote a series of books called Ancient Future, ... You fill in the blank. So there's Ancient Future Faith, Ancient Future Time, Ancient Future Worship, Ancient Future Evangelism. And his whole posture in these books was, as someone part of the modern church movement, and I would say even, embracing it and seeing the value of it, looking at how they did spirituality in the early church and trying to draw on that and see how it could be imported in to give a fullness or a richness to maybe what often happens sometimes in the modern church today, where it gets a little veneer, if you will. Not intentionally, but it can happen. Read his work, read his stuff, check it out. I don't think you'll be disappointed. What was his name again?
Robert Weber, 2
Robert
B's.
Weber. Cool. So here's one pertaining specifically to Fellowship of Faith, but it also matches with the church at large. But at FOF, you seem to do confession a lot. It's kind of a downer. Why so much?
Yeah, it is, man. It is. Thank you for asking. We just see it as something important because, I guess to put it bluntly, the point is not to be a downer for a downer's sake, but we're not afraid of being down because it's okay to be down. Again, humans have a wide panoply of emotions and things that they have to deal with. Here's the point behind confession and why we do it so much. Look, we're messed up. And Fellowship of Faith is a church where we want people to admit it, to own it, to see it, and to deal with it rather than avoid it, deny it, rationalize it, soft pedal it, make light of it. And so it does a couple of functions. It provides a couple of functions for us. One is it's just a reminder to reflect on that. That the Christian way is not about being good people. The Christian way is for sinners. You cannot be a Christian if you are not a sinner and someone who admits their sin. And so it's literally giving a way for people to give their lives to Christ, to admit their sin and call on God for his mercy and grace. Other churches do what they call altar calls. We don't do that, but this is a form of it. It's going, Lord, I come before you today, whether it's for the very first time or whether I'm here for the 500th time today, God, going, I know I've messed up, but I'm recommitting my life to you and accepting and asking for your forgiveness and grace to wash me clean, not to stay in some down point, but to lift me up. And I'll tell you, for me, in the times when I've been most broken in my life, the confession has been the most cathartic, rejuvenating thing I have ever done. Because I could deal with it head on and just, give it out and give it to God and just revel and bask in his forgiveness. So that's the spirit behind it. Anyway, thanks for asking, though.
Yeah, and one that I think follows up with that well. My Christian friend said that Christians are supposed to be broken. This sounds off to me. I don't want to be broken.
Yeah.
I'm interested in Christianity, but does that mean God is going to break me?
Wow, great question on that one, huh?
Yeah.
Thank you. Are Christians supposed to be broken? It's a weird way of putting it. Christians are broken. I think the Christian reality statement of humanity is that humans are broken, Christian or not. Their worldview and their way of looking at the human condition is that we are just broken people. But this is not to indicate that we are supposed to go around living in a state of brokenness. Because fundamentally what God does is he comes into our brokenness and he recreates and renews us. And that is a lifelong process. So we're constantly going to be dealing with elements of this brokenness, probably until Christ comes again and our renewal is complete. But it's meant to be a trajectory towards his restoration and renewal and healing out of that state of brokenness. And yet never feeling like we got to deny what's still kind of lurking there in the shadows. So, I think it's great that you're interested in Christianity. And I encourage you to keep exploring it. And I just want to encourage you that, as I think you do more self-reflection up against Christian teaching, Jesus teaching, the Bible's teachings, you're going to realize that you don't really measure up to that standard. And that's what every Christian has to come to a place of admitting is, I don't live up to God's standard. And it's in that place that if you believe that what God's word is saying is true, you're going to come to see that there's things in you that just aren't in sync with the way you're supposed to be. That's what's meant by brokenness here. And the good news is you can admit it. You don't have to hide it. You don't have to deny it. You don't have to pretend to be a good person. You don't have to put on a mask. Christianity should be, and the practice of a church should be, about going, here's my junk. It's out there. Not to brag about it, but I don't have to be embarrassed about it or hide from it, because I come before God as a sinner and he loves me anyway and forgives me and meets me at that place anyway. Now, final question there. Is God going to break me? I hate to tell you this one, but yes, he is. The longer you walk with God, the more he is going to challenge and confront things in your life that you would prefer him not to. And it just sucks.
And not because he's mad at you.
Not because he's mad at you at all. No, because he loves you, because what he's trying to do is train you, discipline you, or I think of like breaking a horse. And you know, and I think a romantic way of thinking, we think of the wild stallion as being so like, oh, it's so romantic and so amazing. But a good horse trainer who's breaking a horse is not doing it to break a horse's spirit or will. At least that's not my understanding. I'm not a furrier, so I gotta. But it's to take the power and to channel it. It's to take the things that are getting in the way. It's to bring focus. Or if a coach, let's talk about it like coaching.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
You know, a coach comes to a player and puts him through drills and confronts bad form and trains him and conditions him and pushes him beyond his limit, not to like break his spirit, but to hone him into something better. I think of and who was it? And Tony, who talked about his son going off to basic training. I mean, that's rough stuff, right? But at its best, what it's meant to do is take these fears, these impulses, this self-serving nature out of our spirit and form us into something. I mean, that is the point of basic training. Hebrews 12 will talk about this, where God disciplines us as sons. And it'll even go so far to say that if God is not disciplining you, you're an illegitimate child, because it shows that God doesn't care about you, right? But if your parent cares about you, and God is a parent, he is going to mold, shape, discipline. Let me use some big air quotes here, break you, but towards a greater good. Little book I encourage you to pick up. It's a little bit older, but man, it's powerful. Andy Stanley. No. Charles Stanley. You might know Andy Stanley, but his dad, great preacher, Charles Stanley, wrote a little book called The Blessing of Brokenness. 80-page little devotional book. Give it a shot. You probably find it for like $10 on Amazon or CBD or something like that. And CBD is Christian Book Distributors, not a cannabis shop. But
I was like, that seems like a little bit of a stretch. But
right.
And I think the idea of, brokenness and kind of God giving you opportunities to grow and like showing the, the negative things in your life, or the things that you can kind of get rid of or focus on. That made me think of when you pray for patience, how God usually gives you situations where you need to be patient in them. And that kind of goes with that whole idea of, okay, it's not necessarily just gifting you this, but okay, let me show you how to grow this, fruit of the spirit, or whatever it is. That usually when you pray for patience, God's going to give you some awful situations in which you have to be patient in them. And so it's not just like, oh, now you're a patient person. Like, hey, let's learn
and that's
how
what
to
we
be
want.
patient.
We just want God to magically put it out. It's like people with working out. We just magically want to be like ripped and strong. But you got to tax your body against weight that you can't bear, so to speak. And there's a right way of doing it and a wrong way of doing it. And we call that training. Well, that's what it is. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, it takes that work. It takes time. It takes
the spiritual
grace for yourself when you do
different.
mess up.
Yeah,
and I think that's one thing that I think of that with what is it? New Year's resolutions. Like, typically people will last for a couple days into the new year, and then it just stops. Yeah. And same with like Lent. If you're giving up something for Lent or fasting, like if you mess up, it's okay. Restart. Like restart again. It doesn't mean you should just end that, whatever you're working on, whatever the spiritual practice is or the physical practice or whatever. And it doesn't have to be just during Lent either. It's a nice time of year where the church can kind of push and come together as a community to do that.
Yeah, because there's 1,000 things to talk about. So we're giving some time to this one, and it kind of reminds us all going, oh yeah, maybe we should.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think keeping that mindset is key in these times of taxing, because like if you're just like carrying heavy weights around for no purpose without any realization of why you're doing it, it just seems miserable. Likewise, if you're facing spiritual challenges without any kind of forethought given to what this is doing or maybe why it's happening, that's just miserable. But if you can kind of flip the script in your mind and going, I don't like what I'm going through. I'm looking forward to the whistle getting blown, but I'm being forged for something. And that's not to call evil good or to say that God is orchestrating evil in your life for some purpose. No, far from it. But how God can even use the hardest of circumstances that we do face in life to forge us, strengthen us, condition us. in the midst. And it doesn't make it go away, but I find it helps,
Mhm.
you know,
Which is
it helps you
typically
endure.
why
And
you'll find maybe someone in their 20s that is a Christian versus someone in their 50s that, you know, has walked with God those years as well, that may have a little bit of a different understanding or life experiences or things that have happened in their relationship with God that have made them a little bit wiser, a little bit more patient, able to discern maybe through some things as well. And so that's why it's like, this is why it's a great thing to have a church body, so that you can actually utilize each other and have relationships with each other and learn from each other and whatnot. So
you got it.
Yeah, I think that's where the idea of Christian community comes down to that. Of, in order to take advantage of that and live in that community, you have to be willing to be vulnerable,
right?
Because otherwise, anything you're wrestling with or struggling with, it's gonna feel like you're doing it on your own. Because if it's something that isn't talked about widely in the church or isn't discussed, how else would you know that anyone else is going through that? So it's like, God invites us into that community to have those conversations with people and to be willing to, share our own struggles so that we can learn together as a community and grow together.
And of course, that's not just a blanket statement that I'm making there either. I've known guys that are 50 years old, 60 years old, 80 years old, even, that are spiritually more immature than a 20 something.
Right.
So,
Yeah. But just having those conversations and getting to know people, that's how you learn those things. We have one here. I think we've talked a little bit about this, but very simple question, but what is God's image? Or because I think some of that goes into Lent of you're looking to look at your life and see how it's reflecting God's image or not reflecting God's image and grow towards that,
or to imitate Christ.
What are we even trying to? What's the image that we're looking towards?
Great, yeah. Thanks for asking. And and it's actually not a simple answer. In Genesis, the very first chapter of the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, it says that God made humans, male and female alike, in His image. And there is a lot of debate over what that means. So I'm going to give you some of the options that are typically talked about out there. And then I'm going to give you the one that I find the most compelling. Some people think that what it means is that we share some kind of attribute or set of attributes that God might share. Some will go as far as going, it's like a physical resemblance, though really no one who studies this stuff holds to that. But oftentimes you will see it classically put like, well, God is good, so we're good. God is rational, so we're rational. God is a sentient being, so we're a sentient being. God is loving, so we're loving. Some kind of shared attribute state with God. Some will go that way with it in any kind of number of degrees. And there's a few other things I can put out there, but that's the more common one that I see. The one that I find more compelling, though, is that it is actually a job description, meaning an image is a physical representation of something. God is spirit, God is invisible. We are matter, we are not invisible. We are meant to be a physical presence of God, just like in an ancient Near East climate, an idol is meant to be a physical representation of the spirit or deity that it represents. Genesis is set up to talk about creation as God's temple. And this actually gets played on as a storyline throughout the Bible. And we as humans are the physical representation or, quote, idol in that temple. Now, I'm not suggesting that we're supposed to worship each other. No, we're supposed to worship the one true God. But you got to remember, and most Christians, I think, lose sight of this, that God loves creation beyond just humanity. God made it all. God made the cosmos, God made the animal life, God made the vegetative life. God loves it all, and God is actually going to redeem and restore it all, but He has placed humanity in creation to govern creation on His behalf, just like a king would set up a governor in a region, if you will. And so it is meant to reflect God's authority. And that's why Genesis 1, it's all about right after He says, in the image of God, He created them, male and female, He created them. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air. You are my vice regents, if I can use that strange kind of language, or you are my representative to be here on earth, governing, caring for, developing my creation, loving it as I love it in my stead. And we do a really bad job of it. And so we're vandalized images. We should be fired. But God doesn't fire us. And this is why it was so important for God to become a human. This is why the incarnation is so vital, the incarnation of Jesus to Christianity, because what Jesus does is he actually fulfills humanity's job description. And that's why Paul in Colossians chapter 1 will call him the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. He is the physical manifestation of who God is, but not just as God, also as what humanity was always supposed to be. And by doing what humans were supposed to do, connected in Christ, we renew and restore in our calling as well. So, great question, because it's kind of a foundational one, but there's a lot of implications to it and a lot of misunderstanding around it and, things of that nature. So, yeah, thanks for asking.
So, thinking of it as a job description, can you give a quick bulleted list of what would be in said job description?
Yeah, right.
Because it's
right?
like, okay, yeah, I get that idea, but what's the tactile thing within that?
Let's go to maybe something really just surface level on this. And let's set humanity apart for a minute from the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, and just, Earth as we know it. If mom and dad leave the house and leave you the keys, is it okay to trash the house, or are you supposed to do the dishes and take care of it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? Same thing with Earth.
How long are they going to be gone?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. You have time to clean up after the
party.
Yeah.
I have stories.
Little pink houses.
In the pink house.
Yes, it was the pink house.
It's kind of sad to me that environmentalism has become antithetical to Christianity in many circles. And I think in part because within the environmental movement, there's almost sometimes too much of an opposite extreme to nature worship that happens, or not viewing humanity as something special or distinct from creation, as though we are on an equal playing field as like insects or whatever. No, we're not from a biblical standpoint, but it still is God's house and God's creatures, and he doesn't want you killing the pets while he's gone. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And while they are given to us, are we honestly taking care of this world, which is God's, not ours, in the way he wants us to?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just one very surface level thing. But I think if you go down that road, it develops. One more thing I'll put out there. God wants us to develop it. It's not just don't touch anything, just leave it be. I got it perfect. Don't mess it up. No, God started creation, and he called humanity to develop it, to cultivate it, to nurture it. And I can get into Genesis and Revelation and why it starts with you see the first image of God's creation as a garden, and it ends up as a city at the end. It's because it's being developed, things like that. But God doesn't just want us just sitting on our hands. He's like, take this and keep running with it. Go with it further than what I've done. And so this is where science, technology, art, literature, these are all things that are meant to take what God has done in creation and draw more beauty and meaning and cultivation out of it. And this is why vocation is so stinking important. What I mean by vocation is the different jobs and passions and pursuits that we have. Because a lot of people will take a mentality and attitude towards God when they see, let's say, sickness in the world. Why do you allow sickness in the world? And why do you allow this to exist? Why don't you just come down and do something about it? And believe me, I've had those prayers. I don't make light of that. But I think God in our very job description is turned around going, there's this stuff running rampant in the world, and I put you here to do something about it. So figure it out. Develop this world. Take what I've given you in this creation, study it, learn from it, do what's right, both not only to prevent people from getting sick in the ways that we ruined the world, but also to learn how to bring healing and cure to, be it physical ailments, be it deformities and disabilities, be it to economic plight, be it to hunger, be it to pestilence, be it to famine, be it to, all of these things, be it to the violence that people bring on each other in the earth. And that means everything from economics to politics to military science to medicine to, you name it, all has God-given value as a way of developing the creation He's given us.
Yeah, that's a great segue into, because we're about out of time.
Ooh, 2 more minutes.
2 more minutes,
Yeah.
yes. However, what I want to do is maybe go out a little bit differently with this show. And I've asked Kent to cue up something here. It's a song that
I feel like I'm getting set up here, Steve.
You're not. This is actually for our brothers and sisters in Ukraine.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
because of what you just explained and the differences that we can make, and I think we all believe in the power of prayer, and that there's definitely evil in this world. And so because of everything that's happening over in that region, I thought, you know what? I was listening to this song and I thought, this is actually a really great song for what is happening in our world right now. And so I thought, you know what? Because we do believe in the power of prayer, maybe we go out listening to this song and sending our prayers up during this time to see if there's a difference can be made. So
and what's the song? So
it's
people can
called
look it
it's
up
called
later.
Our Eyes Are on You. It's a new song that's out by Martin Smith. In fact, we've done some of his stuff off his recent album. But yeah, I'd encourage you, even just go watch the video on YouTube, because it's pretty powerful, and it has to do with freedom and freedom in God, of course. So, but yeah, if we could just be praying for that whole situation and for God to intervene, because if there's one thing I've learned, even through some studies that you've done at FOF, about these dominant armies that you think, are all powerful, are going to come crush these little armies or little governments or whatever, and then all of a sudden God intervenes, and it doesn't go that way, So I think that's God. That was God then, and that's still the same God now. So, yeah, I would encourage you just at the next 4 minutes, 24 seconds as we listen to this song. We'll see you next week, but pray.
Are you the God of the heavens? Do you rule upon the earth? You say you're the God who delivers. Come on, God, we need you now. When danger comes upon us, we will call upon your name. We don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. We don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. Who can stand against you? Your enemies will fall. The glory of your presence remains above it all. And you promise you will keep us safely by your side. We don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. Are you the God of salvation? You've parted seas and raised the dead. Are you a miracle maker? Come on, God, we need you now. When danger comes upon us, we will call upon your name. We don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. We don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. Who can stand against you? safely by your side. We don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. Save us, God. Save us, God. Oh, you will get the glory. We live to tell the story that you save us, God. That you save us, God. And who can stand against you? Your enemies will fall. The glory of your presence remains above it all. And you promise you will keep us safely by your side. We don't know what to do, but